As a family, tragedy really, I lost my elder brother to suicide. They wear that mask and it's so hard. Is it a weakness to show that you've got emotional well-being issues or to say you're depressed? Talk about it. Do not be scared, embarrassed, ashamed. Almost made myself ill trying to answer questions for answers that weren't there.
Hi, welcome to Changing Suits. My name's Bal.
And my name's Taj.
Last week's episode, we did talk about men's mental health. And this is a subject that isn't spoken about very often. We are hearing about it a lot more. But this is something we really wanted to bring up because over the 2 years, like I said last week, we don't hear from men and how important it is that they have that space to talk. So today we've got Roopy Chahal here. Roopy is here. He is a mental health first aider for BMW and also a trustee in the Heera Foundation. Now, the reason Roopy is here is because he's had a personal experience in regards to suicide. And we wanted to talk about this because, as we said prior to the pressing record, it's not spoken about, and especially within the South Asian community, it's so important that we do talk about it. Roopy, can you give us a bit of an introduction yourself in regards to the work that you do with both the Heera Foundation and BMW as well?
Okay, firstly, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak with Changing Suites and share my own experiences. So I'm employed by BMW, Plant Swindon. I'm a production manager here, but I'm also a mental health first aider. It's a campaign we started across the site about 4.5 years ago, fully supported by BMW, the HR team, the senior management team, even at director level. So I'm very lucky the support we get here. And this is more about looking after our workforce and encouraging predominantly males, it's predominantly a male workforce, to open up and talk about their own personal experiences, emotional well-being, and not to feel ashamed or embarrassed to talk about it. Like you sort of touched on, I'm also a trustee for the Heera Foundation, which is a mental health awareness signposting charity based in the Midlands, doing some excellent work, again, raising awareness. And the reason I got involved for both parties really is one's part of my job, and the second one was the Heera Foundation. The founder of the Heera Foundation, like myself, experienced personal tragedy where we lost loved ones to suicide.
Okay.
I was going to say, could we delve into, if you don't mind, your personal stories about what happened if you could share that?
So 16 years ago, as a family, we was unlucky. Tragedy, really. I lost my elder brother to suicide. I always referred to him as an academic genius, a gentleman, not a bad bone in his body, and someone who lived with depression, but we always thought it was controlled and dealt with.
Can I ask on that point? So 16 years ago, that was a long time. Yes, we're talking about mental health now a lot more, and people might be able to see the signs and the symptoms and all, pick up, oh, perhaps that person does have depression. But that long ago, it wasn't so easy because we didn't talk about it. Did you actually know your brother suffered from depression?
We did, and never to the extent where we thought anyone would contemplate suicide. And I refer to I hate to use the word mental well-being because of the stigma, the taboo, the dark cloud with the word mental, So I always try to refer to it as emotional well-being issues. And to this day, I still call it the blind illness. If someone's unlucky enough to break an arm or a leg, we see someone walking around with a plaster. If someone's suffering from cancer or another illness, we see a deterioration in their personal appearance, hair loss, weight loss. Someone who's masking or walking and living with emotional well-being issues, they wear that mask and it's so hard. It's so hard to unmask or the person to open up and talk openly.
What were you seeing? So obviously you realised he was going through problems and he did have depression. What were the signs that you saw yourself as a family?
It's hard. You become withdrawn from your family, society to a degree. Mannerisms. Lucky, we never saw. It happened very quickly. From where we were to when it happened, it was a total shock. But since then, I've been involved with so many other cases, and I always say there's no two cases that are the same.
So in the community, there seems to be, I don't know if it's an increase or just awareness of quite a lot of young men committing suicide. Why do you think, if it is an increase, that it's happening so much?
Peer pressure.
What do you mean? What do you mean by peer pressure?
Pressure, I think there's an expectation, especially in the Punjabi community, about being successful, young males, professionals, the breadwinners. And also, I think if someone, not so much now, because we talk a lot more openly about this, but I think historically, and I've noticed over the last 5-6 years, people are a lot more open, especially Punjabi males, but there was still that thing about, is it a weakness to show that you've got emotional well-being issues or to say you're depressed? Our people, and I hate to generalize, people will say, well, what have you got to be depressed about? You got a lovely house, you got a lovely wife, you drive a Mercedes, you live in a 5-bedroom house, all materialistic things.
With your brother's case, was there something that triggered it? Because with certain things, you always try to find. I know this is very much a sort of Western way of looking at it, but a cause for the depression to start. Was there anything that you can pinpoint in your brother's case that sort of triggered it off?
I think my brother was, and I stand by this, my brother was a gentleman. He was an honest individual. I think certain cases around employers and employment where I think my brother done everything by the book. Maybe that had some sort of factor. And, we never know. We'll never know.
But that's part of the parcel, isn't it? When the people that get left behind, you start trying to investigate what happened. But at the end of the day, sometimes you'll never know what happened. You'll never know what went on in the person's mind. And to do that, you're almost torturing yourself. So it's almost acceptance that it's happened. There was a reason that it happened, and maybe you'll never find the root reason to why it happened.
I think you just hit the nail on the head. I almost made myself ill trying to answer questions for answers that weren't there, that no one could answer. And you hear about the 5 whys, why this, why that, why our family,
But then on that point, Ruby, because it was so long ago and you had identified perhaps it was depression, and again, I think I'm thinking of it too simplistically, where I'm like, oh, there must have been a root cause. But again, with depression, we know there may well not be something you can pinpoint, which is so interesting itself. Your family look for a treatment, say to him, look, go and get counselling. Was there anything in regards to that done?
Yeah, there was support, but I think, we're talking 16 years ago.
Yeah.
It wasn't there.
I think there is a level of still people having an issue, being open about talking about mental health, but it's getting better. But like we say, we don't know what the one person to the next person is thinking on a daily basis. So to think back what happened 16 years ago, again, there's no point doing that because it's just torture. And do you think, what does about Heera Foundation, what can they offer for people that are going through similar things where they're worried about a loved one?
Heera Foundation, you have to know your limitations as a charity, what you can do, what you can deliver. And the one thing I think you have to be very mindful of is giving someone false hope. And I think on a personal level, like as a mental health first aider, you have to know the boundaries. The Heera Foundation, we are very, very good at signposting and directing people to the right support networks. As an individual, I always use the phrase, I'm not Harry Potter, I can't fix individuals, but what I can do is I can share my own experiences and encourage individuals to talk, open up and signpost. And I think the one thing all of us need in life is reassurance. And if you can reassure individuals, it's massive, absolutely massive. And I use one of the smallest words in the English alphabet, if, 2 letters. If someone had been there 16 years ago to talk to my brother, maybe he'd still be here today. And that's my motivator, that if. And by helping individuals, if you can help or support an individual or their family, and knowing by talking to them, even if it's for an hour or a half hour, they're in a better place than where they were when they come to you, and you've signposted them, you've done something positive.
One thing that you said in regards to your brother's case, and you've obviously spent a lot of time thinking, of course, about why it happened and what happened. The interesting thing that you said was, although you couldn't pinpoint it, you did mention, he was a gentleman. He listened to everything he was told. He was an excellent employee. Now, we've had a number of podcasts where it's about stress and anxiety, obviously on the other side of the whole mental health journey. But we have had conversations where it's the pressure that we put as South Asian parents, as a community. So that pressure from both family and community, these conversations come up where it is causing very big negatives in people's minds and is causing these mental health issues. Now, even as we go forward, I know even with my own kids, I do put pressure on them to, do well at school or go to the clubs they're supposed to go to. How can we, as a South Asian, the next generation, sort of relieve that pressure, but still, I don't know, it's a bit of a tough question. It's that balance.
It's a balance, isn't it? You want to push your child, but you don't want to push them too far. Is there a way that you can ever do that, Rupi, in your opinion?
So is there anything that we can do to balance that then, Rupi?
I think to balance it, I think the one thing we have to do is encourage individuals, all individuals, the people experiencing the issues, the family, friends on the receiving end, the support network, to be sympathetic and not judgmental of the issues.
I mean, words are really important, like we're understanding. What are the words that we can use to support someone? Because usually we'll go out and we'll say, "How are you doing?" But do we actually mean, really tell me, how are you doing? Is there any guidance that you can give us to support an individual, or how to open up the conversation?
Any guidance? Like we always say, no two cases are the same.
That's true, yeah.
Being a good listener, not being judgmental, reassurance, sympathetic.
What are the kind of cases that are coming through that you're hearing about? Obviously, not personally naming anyone,
But without
without disclosing.
young males, always on the rise, always on the rise. Young Asian males also seem to be dealing with a lot more teenagers.
Okay, that's interesting.
And I think with teenagers, there almost seems to be a trend, and you've got to be very careful. Like, social media is massive. There's elements of bullying and people trying to conform to social media, which I'm a bit of a dinosaur. I won't do social media.
Well, very well. Bal's a bit of a dinosaur as well in that respect. She doesn't like social media, whereas I understand how addicted you can get to it and how the life looks perfect when you look at social media and you want to match that perfect. And that's where the pressures come from.
But what you find on social media, and it's wrong to generalize, most people or a lot of people will only ever share posts that are
Yeah,
positive, and then others looking into it look at this and think, oh, this person's lifestyle is amazing, this, that, and you try to compete. And whether it's intentional or unintentional, everyone wants a slice of the good cake.
that's it. It's
And
like a shop window. You'll only
it,
put the good pieces out. You're not going to show the rubbish that goes on in the background, how you're stocking up and things. It's
yeah,
the display, and that is how it is in social media. And is that what you're finding with teenagers? They're feeling the pressure from social media. So this
definitely.
new age is just, although we're moving in advance, it's affecting our mental health.
Massively. And I think I call it phone detox. All of us, we're
Yeah,
addicted to our phones.
we are. Mm.
All of us, how many of us have our phone beside us at night time?
God,
We
I'm
are not
lost
running
without it. Mm.
multi-billion-pound corporation businesses. We are not emergency doctors at the end of a phone call.
That's
You could
true.
put your phone downstairs. It disturbs your sleep. Deep sleep deprivation is massive.
Mm.
Do we really, really need our phones beside us? No.
I think that's a really good way of putting it. Are we doctor? Do we need to answer something straight away? But we're in that mindset where we think, "Oh my God, I better answer a message straight away."
If someone needs to get hold of you, they will get hold of you, Tad.
That is true.
Can I ask, in regards to the fact that you're seeing young Asian men and even teenagers, are they approaching the foundation then? So they are taking a positive step if they are doing that.
There are. There's been a massive campaign in the Midlands with the Heera Foundation, where they do events, open forums, where we encourage people to talk about their problems with alcohol, drug addiction, and generally emotional well-being issues. So there's a real push from the Heera Foundation, and there's certain members on different campaigns. We've worked with women, children, going into schools and colleges. Pav Johal, one of the other trustees, is doing loads of stuff with Leicestershire Authority to raise awareness. Like we say, the sooner you can identify individuals with emotional well-being, hopefully the easier it is to address.
Are you finding when you are going on these awareness events and talks that people then come up to you, whether it's one-to-one or within the group setting, and saying, well, actually, I'm going through this? Because that's something we found as an organisation. We get people saying, look, this is what I'm going through. I'm so glad you had this podcast on this subject. I've been through this. And we're having a lot more conversations. Yes, we aren't per se looking at any specific topics. It is a cultural thing that we're looking at.
Yeah,
But
so
it's opening up the conversation, isn't it?
definitely. So I was lucky enough to do a couple of talks, open forums with one at GMP Gurdwara in Coventry, one of the biggest Gurdwaras in the country in Coventry, and we had a real mixed audience. You know, all ages from teenagers, young dads, middle-aged men, and some elders. And we've done a follow-up with a charity, Nermal Pure Minds, another Midland-based charity. And it again, like you say, some people are very comfortable talking openly in a group, but what was really reassuring, the amount of individuals that approached you privately after, and not everyone's comfortable, confident to speak in an arena or to share their problem. But, you know, the phone calls and the contacts that were made afterwards, it sounds mad, but it was refreshing that people are prepared to talk.
And it's a massive thing, the fact that they are talking, because that's the sort of messages I'm getting from the podcast that we're recording. If you give someone that platform to talk, then, you know, you can't stop anything like suicide from happening, but at least you did what you could to help that person as much as you could. Everything else is out of your
Yeah,
hands.
definitely. And, you know, there's lots of charities now. And the good thing is there's a lot of Punjabi-based, Sikhi-based charities and other organisations like the great work Mind do, Calm. You know, there's lots of organisations out there now that are really pushing and raising awareness and offering support. We could all do more. All of us could. And, you know, funding and support and employers, everyone of us can
As a
improve.
family, what could people do? Because there is mental health courses out there to become mental health first aiders, isn't there, that are available?
But again, the interesting thing with that is the fact that unless you've been through something like, you know, whether it's self-harm or someone's had severe depression or a suicide, us as individuals don't think of doing things like that. The only reason I'm assuming, Ruby, correct me if I'm wrong, that you got involved in Heera Foundation or, you know, being a mental first aider is because of what you've been through personally.
Definitely. You know, if I'm being totally honest with you, would I have got involved? Probably not. And I
Yeah.
think, you know, you don't have to experience. That's wrong. It probably makes it easier because you can connect, you can relate to these issues.
Yeah.
There's an element of wanting to as well. And I think, like I said, if you can help and make sure another family doesn't experience the tragedy we did, or like work colleagues, you know, at BMW plant Swindon, I'd say over the last 10 years, we've had 5 suicides.
Oh,
Oh,
wow.
wow. Oh, my God.
Okay. And I heard about someone mentioned something in their own company just last week, exactly the same thing, suicides, and they did get the help, but it's crazy the number of times we're hearing about it.
But that just shows how important it is for organisations, employers, to be involved in looking after or supporting people with their mental health as well. Just the fact that you said that 5 employees have committed suicide. How horrible is that? Yeah, Val?
Can I just ask, in regards to when 16 years ago, when it did happen, and I think this is the tough bit, what did you as a family go through? What was the community's response to it? Did you tell the community before the suicide happened that perhaps your brother had depression? Were you
No,
vocal about it?
I don't think we did, because I didn't think people needed to know. I think immediate family knew,
Yeah.
and you know, it was very, for my sister-in-law, my niece, and my nephew. I've got the utmost respect, and I think my sister-in-law deserves so much credit to raise two teenage children, a son and a daughter, and they made their dad proud. Both graduated. My niece happily married in the Midlands. Got with her own family now. Got a lovely little. We got a granddaughter. Nephew's due to get married. So hopefully my brother's looking down. But I think a lot of credit goes to my sister-in-law to keep the family together. It took a massive toll on my parents. No parent expects to attend a funeral of their own children.
Can I ask on the fact that obviously you didn't talk about it because you just said, we didn't feel the need to talk about it. Now, looking back at it, would you change your perspective? Would you be more open about the fact that he was going through depression, for example?
I'm lucky enough now where I'm dealing with cases where families are telling the individual to keep it quiet, not to share their experience or not to tell people that they're depressed. In our family, it was never that was never the situation. That was never the case. So would I change? I don't think there's nothing we could have changed.
What about those? Okay, so what about those cases? And this is just from seeing it from the outside. And I'm just trying to say, if we ourselves say, look, I'm going through mental health problems, would it help someone else to say, actually, so am I? That's the sort of thing I'm thinking. So where you're seeing families now saying that they're saying to their children, don't tell anyone. And I understand it. Look, we're from a family where there are a number of health issues. And to tell you the truth, we haven't spoken about them on the podcast for the very same reason. So it's very easy to throw stones. But as a community, as a society, what should we be doing? And that's not to say that I am doing it.
No, okay.
In a perfect world.
In a perfect world.
Okay. Perfect
In a perfect world, it wouldn't be happening in the first place.
We wouldn't be having this conversation.
No.
Well, I hate to use stats and data, but I think mental health for England, prior to the pandemic and COVID, their own data and analysis said that 1 in 3 adults would probably experience some form of emotional well-being issues. 1 in 3. I think every one of us will experience some form of emotional well-being, depending
100% agree with that. Yeah.
from
It's identifying it, isn't it? Identifying it.
from mild, very mild anxiety to worst case scenario.
I mean, we've all got mental health. Yeah.
All of us.
Mm.
So it's there. It's in our genes. It's how we deal with it. And the Heera Foundation sort of motto phrase is "It's okay not to be okay." And, lots of people use that phrase. How do we define okay?
Yeah.
So if we are feeling down, is it so much to say to people we're feeling low, need a bit of support, need a bit of reassurance? And like you said, Bal, once you open up and you share your own experience, it's not surprising how many other people say, "I'm
Me
feeling
too.
the same."
Yeah.
Yeah, me too. One
It's,
thing leads to another, and then
it's that
it's
safe space
common.
again, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's creating that safe space.
The other thing is, how do you support a support family where there has been a suicide? Because that, we're having this conversation obviously 16 years on. I'm sure it's still a very painful subject for you. But for
every day,
someone,
every day. Yeah. So I think that was my brother, and then in Swindon we had another member of the Punjabi community, a good friend of ours, very good friend of mine. He too committed suicide. So
how does everyone in the community support you? How do you support someone that's had a friend that's committed suicide or a family member that's committed? What can we as a society, as a community do?
you're never going to stop people talking. Gossip mongers, rumours. I hate to say this, the Punjabi community is probably the hardest community to break down. We are probably the most judgmental, most opinionated out of communities. Everybody wants to know everyone else's business, but they don't want no one to know your business.
That's with quite a lot of South Asian. We've had podcasts with quite a lot of different people from different areas of the South Asian community, and they've said the same as well, as in everyone wants to know the other person's business, but they don't want to disclose their own.
No,
It seems
But this is where culturally it's not. I mean, from what we've seen talking to people, it's a cultural issue within the whole of the South Asian community. We did recorded a podcast with someone just the other day, and she said exactly the same thing. You know, she went through divorce at that point, and people were saying things. And if you throw it back to someone else, it's a case of, oh, actually, nothing. I don't want to talk about
How
it.
how did you deal with the gossip, or did you deal with it, or did you shut yourself away from it?
On a personal level, me personally, my coping mechanism was drink. I turned to drink. I was a secret drinker. I hid it from my wife, my children, my parents, my work colleagues. I think if you look at 99% of people in an office, you'll see people got a water bottle on on their desk. I used to have a bottle, and I'm not ashamed to admit it, that had vodka in it.
Oh, wow. Mm.
That was,
Your
15
coping
years.
strategy. Mm.
That's my coping mechanism, hiding it, and that's what used to get me through. I'm lucky enough now, I've been teetotal. I've had a drink now for over 13 years.
Congratulations. Wow. Mm.
And, I'll never tell anyone stop drinking. That's not for me. That's down to the individual. It's like anything. Whatever you want to do, you do within moderation, as long as you're not doing harm to an individual or yourself. Some doctors will tell you a glass of wine or something with your meal's healthy for you, but it's
And for
no.
yourself, so you've obviously gone teetotal. Do you think you're in a more healthier way of coping with it, because you are still going through it, like you said, it was your brother.
Well, you live it every single day. Each time I
Yeah.
see my niece, my nephew, my sister-in-law, I see pictures at mum and dad's. You're so proud. There's so many nice pictures, of like my brother, my nieces, my nephews, my sons with their graduation pictures, and
I don't want to ask this question because me and Taz are already, I can tell we're not very good with things. We'll still start tearing up, but I do want to ask this question because you touched on it earlier, and I think this is where we will tear up slightly. How are your parents now?
my mum. It absolutely destroyed my mum. Absolutely destroyed her. But mum's got she's so resilient. I think my dad, I'm lucky enough to lose dad last year. Dad never really spoke about it. I think he was an old school Punjabi man.
Do you think that's a man thing, not to speak about it? And that generation as well. And even our generation, not just the older generation, to keep things to
Yeah,
yourself.
I think there were elements of it. I think there were probably bits. I think dad was hurt, upset. Why him? Why his son?
And you do question yourself, why us? Why did it happen to us?
100%, 100%. And then you start to think, could we have done more? Should, would, words. Yeah, it was hard, and it still is hard. There's massive events. Family events where you do miss him more than ever, but you have to keep going. You have to keep going. You have to reassure people, individuals, families.
As we come to the end of this episode, and before anything, I just want to thank you because like I said, it's very easy for someone on the outside to say, oh, talk about this, but you've lived there, you know how hard it is, and we always appreciate when anyone shares their story with us. What advice would you give someone, a family member, where their loved one is going through mental health issues and there are those signs that they should be looking out for? What should they do?
Firstly, please don't be judgmental. Emotional well-being, it's an illness. No one chooses to suffer from this. Reassure, signpost, ask for support, keep banging at doors, knock every single door you can to get support. But the main thing is reassurance. Reassure the individual and reassure the family members.
What advice would you give a family or loved ones whose family member has committed suicide?
Remember the good times. Someone who's taken their own life, it is out of desperation, and try not to hold yourself accountable. The individual that's taken their life could see no way out, and you have to reassure the loved ones that are left. I think, worldwide, again, I hate to do this, statistics, every 61 seconds there's a suicide. Every 62 seconds, someone has to pick up the pieces and to try to move on. Learn from it, reassure, support, talk. The main the main phrase here is talk about it. Do not be scared, embarrassed, ashamed to talk and share your experiences. By talking, we can make progress.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your time and sharing your experience. I've already said thank you, and we genuinely do appreciate it, because hopefully, even if there's one person that saved with listening to this podcast, it was well worth it. So thank you, and carry on doing the great work that you're already doing.
No, thank you. Thank you for, again, giving me the opportunity to share my own experiences, and please keep up the good work, and any way we can work together in any sort of project, happy to support you both.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Goodbye. That's goodbye from me.
And goodbye from me.
Follow us on Instagram and Facebook, changing_suits, and subscribe so you never miss an episode.